She was always quiet, the kind of girl who could walk into a room and almost disappear if she wanted. People noticed her sometimes, but only in the way you notice someone standing too close to a wall, someone who seems to fade into the background. In class, she would sit in the last row, her books stacked neatly in front of her, her fingers fidgeting with a pen or tapping softly on the desk, like a secret rhythm only she could hear. Teachers occasionally called on her, but she rarely spoke more than a few sentences. Her classmates whispered and laughed about things she didn't understand, things she didn't even care to understand. They thought she was ordinary, maybe even boring, and she let them believe it. But behind her quiet eyes was a world that no one could see. At home, she had a small piano in the corner of the living room, worn from years of use. The keys were slightly yellowed, and the pedals squeaked when pressed, but it didn't matter to her. This piano was more than an instrument. It was a place where she could breathe, where she could pour out everything she felt without worrying if anyone was listening. She had discovered it years ago by accident, when she had wandered into the living room and pressed a key. The sound had made her heart leap, and from that moment, she had been drawn to it every day. Her fingers moved over the keys with care and precision, not because she wanted to impress anyone, but because she wanted to understand the music. She would play slowly at first, testing each note, feeling how it resonated inside her. Then gradually she would let her fingers run faster, letting the melody take over her completely. She didn't play the same songs every time. She played what she felt. Sometimes it was joy, sometimes sorrow, sometimes a mix of everything she could not put into words. Her parents often watched from the doorway, smiling quietly, never interrupting. They knew this music was her escape, her way of speaking when she had no other voice. School was different. At school, she had to hide her love for music. She knew what people thought. She had tried once to show a classmate a song she had learned, and they had laughed. The laughter had stung more than she wanted to admit, and she had decided that day to keep her music to herself. She still played, but always in secret. In the early mornings before anyone was awake, or late at night when the house was quiet, music became her companion, her friend, and her refuge. Despite her quiet nature, she had a few small habits that made her presence known. She always arrived early, taking her seat at the back before the classroom filled. She organized her books in perfect order, wrote neatly in her notebook, and occasionally doodled small sketches in the margins. People didn't pay much attention to these little details, thinking they were just part of her strange, quiet personality. But these were the small ways she prepared herself for something bigger, something that even she didn't fully understand yet. Her classmates were a mix of personalities. Some were loud and confident, always eager to show off. Others were shy but tried to fit in. She watched them all from the corner, noticing the little things no one else did. The way one student tapped their foot when nervous. The way another chewed the end of their pencil when deep in thought. She observed not to judge, but because she liked to understand people, their patterns, their stories. And in a way, this quiet observation helped her music too. She learned to read the unspoken feelings of people, translating them into melodies she could play on her piano. One particular afternoon, the school announced that there would be a talent show. Students buzzed with excitement, already planning their acts and rehearsing songs in secret corners of the school. Whispers spread quickly. Who would sing, who would dance, who would do something extraordinary? Everyone assumed they knew the usual names, the confident ones who had always sought attention. No one mentioned her. She felt the stir of nerves when the announcement was made, but she also felt a strange pull in her chest, a tiny spark of something daring. The thought of performing in front of people terrified her, but it also made her heart beat faster in a way that was almost exciting. She went home that day with the announcement echoing in her mind. She sat at her piano and pressed her fingers to the keys, thinking about the possibility of performing. For a long time, she hesitated. What if they laughed? What if they didn't take her seriously? But as she played, a melody began to form, one that was full of her own feelings, raw and honest. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about sharing a piece of herself that she had kept hidden for so long. She decided that if she performed, it would be on her own terms, playing from her heart, letting the music speak before words could. Over the next few days, she practiced with more determination than ever. Each session at the piano was like a conversation between her and the instrument. She experimented with different rhythms, with quiet passages and louder bursts of emotion. She wrote little notes for herself, reminders to pause, to breathe, to feel. Her parents noticed the change. She moved with purpose, her fingers dancing over the keys with confidence that had never been there before. And slowly, a song began to take shape, one that felt alive, one that told her story without a single word. At school, life continued as usual. People still whispered, still laughed at small things, still overlooked her in the hallways. But she noticed them less and less. She was no longer just the quiet girl in the back row. She was the girl with a secret. The girl whose heart was filled with music that no one had heard yet. Sometimes she caught glimpses of students practicing their acts for the talent show, singing loudly, showing off tricks. She smiled softly, not with envy, but with a quiet determination. She didn't need applause right now. She just needed to be ready. One evening, as she played her song, she paused to listen to the notes lingering in the air. She realized she had added something new, something she had never tried before. The melody was more personal now, more honest. It was as if the piano had become a mirror of her soul. She imagined what it would be like to play it in front of an audience, to let people hear not just the notes but the emotions behind them. The thought was terrifying, but it also made her feel alive in a way nothing else had. The night before the talent show, she stayed up late, her fingers tracing the keys in the dim light of her room. She didn't want to go to sleep because sleep would mean waiting, and waiting meant uncertainty. She played her song over and over, not perfect, not flawless, but true. She memorized every note, every pause, every moment where her heart spoke louder than her fingers. She closed her eyes and imagined the audience, imagining the silence, the anticipation, and the release when the first note filled the room. She felt a strange mix of fear and excitement, the kind that makes you tremble and smile at the same time. That night, she lay in bed thinking about what it would mean to perform. She didn't need anyone to cheer for her. She didn't need anyone to notice her. All she wanted was to let the music flow, to let herself be heard, to let the world glimpse the soul she had kept hidden for so long. Sleep came slowly, but when it did, it was filled with dreams of music, of notes dancing around her room, of melodies that could speak louder than words. The next morning, she woke with a strange calm. She dressed quietly, ate breakfast with her parents, who gave her encouraging smiles but no advice. They knew this was something she had to do on her own. She took a deep breath and imagined herself stepping onto the stage, imagining the first note echoing through the room. She felt ready, even though the butterflies in her stomach reminded her she was still scared. At school, the gymnasium was buzzing with excitement. Students lined the walls, teachers took seats at the front, and the usual chatter filled the air. Acts were announced, and one by one, students performed. Singing, dancing, magic tricks, comedy routines, all executed with confidence and showmanship. Everyone expected more of the same, and no one thought about the quiet girl sitting at the back, clutching her music sheets, her palms slightly sweaty. When her turn was called, she walked to the stage slowly, feeling the weight of every eye on her. She took a deep breath, sat down at the piano that had been set up for her, and closed her eyes for a moment. Then her fingers touched the keys, and the first note floated into the room. The sound was soft at first, almost shy, but it carried something unexpected, something honest and alive. As she played, she didn't just press keys. She told a story. She let her soul pour through each note, and slowly, the room began to change. Whispers faded, eyes widened, and even the skeptics leaned forward, drawn into the music. By the time she finished, the room was silent for a heartbeat, and then the applause came. Not the polite clapping for participation, but the real heartfelt sound of people moved by something they hadn't expected. She opened her eyes, surprised by the reaction, and for the first time she felt seen, not for her quietness, not for blending in, but for who she truly was, for the music she had kept hidden now revealed in all its beauty. She smiled softly, a quiet acknowledgement that this was only the beginning, that she had finally shared a piece of herself with the world. After the talent show, life at school felt different for her. People looked at her with new eyes, a mix of curiosity and respect, but also with whispers and glances that made her heart pound. Some students tried to approach her, complimenting her playing, but she always felt a little shy, unsure how to respond. She wasn't used to attention. Her music had always been private. Yet deep inside, a small spark of pride warmed her. For the first time, she realized that her passion could reach others, that her quiet voice could be heard in a world that usually ignored her. Her parents noticed the change immediately. They didn't push her, but they encouraged her gently, reminding her that her talent was precious and deserved care. At home, the piano no longer felt like a secret, but a bridge to something larger, a connection between her world and the world outside. She spent hours at the keys, practicing, refining, not because anyone demanded it, but because she wanted to understand her music more fully. She experimented with different melodies, learning to express complex emotions, shaping her music like clay, feeling it bend and stretch beneath her fingers. Despite the growing attention, she faced challenges she hadn't anticipated. Some classmates couldn't hide their envy. They whispered behind her back, saying that the applause she received was luck, or that she had been overrated. These words hurt, but she learned to let them slide, focusing on the joy music gave her rather than the opinions of others. She realized that the world would always try to label people, to put them into boxes, but she didn't have to conform. Her music was her identity, and it couldn't be taken away. The school announced another event, a bigger one this time, a regional performance where students could represent the school. Excitement buzzed through the hallways, but also pressure. The confident students were already preparing, boasting about their plans while she hesitated. She wondered if she was ready for such a stage. Her hands trembled as she thought about performing again in front of a larger audience. Doubts crept in, but she also felt a stronger pull. She couldn't ignore the music inside her. She wanted to share it even if it scared her. She decided to participate. The decision felt like stepping into unknown territory, but the fear was accompanied by determination. At home, she practiced with a new intensity, imagining the audience, imagining the emotions she wanted them to feel. She tried different techniques, playing faster, slower, louder, softer. Sometimes she would stop and listen, closing her eyes, letting the notes linger in the room, imagining them as a bridge between her heart and the audience's. Every session ended with a sense of accomplishment, a feeling that she was growing not just as a musician, but as a person. Her parents supported her quietly. They never pressured her, never demanded results, but they offered encouragement in small ways. A smile, a warm cup of tea while she practiced, a gentle comment about how her music filled the house with life. Their support gave her courage. She realized that performing wasn't just about showing skill. It was about connecting with others, letting them see a piece of herself she had kept private for so long. At school, the rumors of her talent continued to spread. Students who had ignored her before now sought her out, asking questions about her music, how she learned, what inspired her. Some were genuine, others curious or envious. She answered politely but reservedly, not wanting to reveal too much. Her focus remained on her preparation, on making the music speak louder than words ever could. As the day of the regional performance approached, the nerves grew. She felt the familiar butterflies in her stomach, a mix of fear and excitement that made her palms sweat. She questioned herself repeatedly. Could she really perform? Could she make them understand what the music meant? Every time doubt crept in, she returned to the piano, letting her fingers tell her the answer. Each note reassured her. Each melody reminded her why she loved this so deeply. The music was hers, and it could carry her anywhere. On the morning of the performance, she woke early, her mind buzzing with anticipation. She dressed quietly, ate breakfast with her parents, who exchanged a look of pride and understanding. They didn't need to say anything. She could feel their support wrapping around her like a warm blanket. She carried her sheet music carefully, her hands trembling slightly, and made her way to the school. The bus ride felt long, the chatter of other students a distant hum compared to the music playing in her mind. She rehearsed the first few notes silently, letting the melody calm her nerves. When she arrived, the venue was larger than she expected. The stage was bright, the seats filled with people, and the air buzzed with energy. Her heart raced as she watched other students perform, each act met with applause and cheers. The pressure weighed on her, but she remembered the quiet moments at home, the hours spent practicing, the connection she felt with her music. This was her chance to let it shine. When her turn came, she walked onto the stage slowly, taking a deep breath. The lights were bright, the audience staring, and for a moment fear gripped her chest. She closed her eyes and let the music take over, placing her fingers on the keys. The first note rang out, soft but clear, a whisper that slowly grew into a story. She played with emotion, letting each chord express what words could not. The audience sat in silence, caught in the flow of her music, drawn into the story she was telling. As she continued, the room seemed to transform. The bright lights faded into a blur, and it was just her and the piano, her soul reaching out through the notes. Every pause, every crescendo, every gentle touch of a key conveyed something profound. She was no longer just performing. She was communicating, connecting with each person in the audience in a way that was both personal and universal. She played not to impress, but to express, and that honesty touched everyone listening. When the last note faded, there was a heartbeat of silence, a moment where the world seemed to hold its breath. Then the applause erupted, louder and more genuine than anything she had experienced before. Students, teachers, strangers, all were on their feet, moved by the depth of her performance. She opened her eyes, tears welling up, feeling a mixture of relief, joy, and disbelief. She had shared a piece of herself, and it had been received with love and admiration. Backstage, her parents hugged her tightly, their faces shining with pride. Other students came forward, some apologetic for doubting her, others amazed by what they had seen. She smiled, feeling a sense of connection she had never known before. For the first time, she understood that her quiet nature was not a limitation. It was a part of her that allowed her to see, to feel, and to express in ways others could not. In the days that followed, her life changed subtly but significantly. Teachers recommended her for more opportunities. Fellow students began to respect her in ways they hadn't before, and she found herself being approached with questions and encouragement. Yet she remained grounded, practicing in her own time, letting music continue to be her refuge, her companion. The attention was new, but it didn't define her. She was still the quiet girl in the back row, still the one who played from her soul. But now the world had glimpsed what she had always known. Her music was extraordinary. Through all of this, she learned an important lesson. Talent alone was not enough. Courage to share it, persistence in the face of doubt, and a willingness to be vulnerable were what made her story remarkable. She realized that fear and excitement could coexist, that failure was possible. But the act of sharing herself through music was worth every risk. The music was her truth, and truth had a power that could not be denied. Even as the events settled into memories, she continued to practice, each day discovering new depths in her music, new ways to express herself. She played not for fame or recognition, but because it was who she was, because it allowed her to speak when words fell short. And every time her fingers touched the keys, she remembered the quiet courage it had taken to step onto that stage, to play not just for the audience but for herself, and in doing so, to discover a strength she had never known she possessed. The day of the big regional performance arrived with a mixture of excitement and nervousness that made her stomach twist in knots. The hall was enormous, with rows of seats stretching further than she could see and bright lights aimed directly at the stage. The air was thick with anticipation, filled with the hum of conversations, the rustle of programs, and the occasional nervous laugh of participants. She carried her sheet music carefully, her hands trembling slightly, and took a deep breath. Every fiber of her being seemed to tingle with a strange energy she had never felt before. Backstage, she watched other performers go one by one. Some sang with powerful voices, filling the room with energy that seemed to bounce off the walls. Others danced with precision, showing hours of practice and confidence. She admired their courage and skill, but a part of her still felt the familiar pang of doubt. Could she really make them understand her music? Could she reach their hearts in the same way she had dreamed of so many nights at her piano? Her parents' supportive smiles were her only comfort, grounding her as she rehearsed the opening notes silently in her mind. When her name was called, she walked onto the stage slowly, trying to ignore the bright lights and the sea of faces. The applause from the audience felt distant, almost surreal. She approached the piano, placed her fingers lightly on the keys, and closed her eyes. In that brief moment, the world fell away. There were no doubts, no fears, no whispers. There was only her and the music and the story she wanted to tell. The first note sounded soft and deliberate, carrying a quiet intensity that drew the audience in. She played with a delicate balance, letting the melody rise and fall like gentle waves, each note carefully chosen, each pause meaningful. The audience leaned forward without realizing it, captivated by the unexpected depth that emanated from her fingertips. She played not to impress, not to seek applause, but to share a part of herself that had lived in silence for too long. Every chord, every touch of the key was a whisper of her soul, a message to the world that she had finally found her voice. As she continued, her confidence grew. The music flowed from her naturally, her fingers dancing over the keys with a grace that seemed effortless. She had practiced for this moment for countless hours, but now it was no longer about preparation. It was about presence, about feeling every note, about letting the music carry her where words could not. Her heart thudded in rhythm with the melody, and for the first time she felt a complete harmony between her mind, her body, and the piano. The audience was silent, held in the spell of her performance. Teachers and students alike were mesmerized, caught in the emotional tide of her playing. Some faces reflected surprise, others awe, and a few even showed tears quietly glistening. She could sense that her music had touched them, that the quiet girl they had ignored was now speaking louder than anyone ever had. She didn't look for recognition, but the realization that her music could move others filled her with a warmth she had never known. Halfway through, she introduced a new section she had improvised only the night before. It was bold, unexpected, and entirely her own. Her fingers moved with certainty, weaving a tapestry of sound that was both delicate and powerful. The notes carried laughter, sorrow, longing, and hope, all mingling in a way that felt organic and alive. She didn't pause to think about perfection. She let the music breathe, let it flow, and let it reveal her essence. Each chord was an echo of her emotions, each rhythm a heartbeat that connected her to every person listening. As the piece built toward its climax, she felt a strange sense of liberation. Fear had vanished, replaced by an exhilarating freedom. She was no longer just performing. She was living the music, becoming part of it, letting it tell her story as much as she told it. The audience, too, was part of this shared experience, their attention and stillness amplifying the resonance of every note. She realized that music had a way of breaking barriers, of dissolving the walls between people, of allowing souls to connect without words. That realization made her smile softly as she played, a quiet joy that was visible only to those paying close attention. The final notes approached, and she slowed deliberately, letting each one linger, filling the space with echoes of her journey. The last chord hung in the air, a gentle declaration of who she was and what she had to offer. Silence followed for a brief moment, thick with anticipation and emotion. Then the applause erupted, overwhelming and heartfelt. The sound washed over her like a wave, and for the first time, she truly felt the magnitude of what she had shared. Standing ovations, cheers, and tears of admiration surrounded her, but she only focused on the quiet satisfaction that she had played from her soul. Backstage, her parents rushed to her, hugging her tightly. Their eyes shone with pride, and their embrace offered a sense of grounding she had never felt before. Other students approached, some with compliments, others with expressions of surprise and awe. The shy smiles, the murmurs of admiration, and even the quiet apologies for past dismissals all swirled around her. But she kept her focus on the music that had carried her here. She understood now that talent was just a beginning. Courage, honesty, and the willingness to share oneself were what truly mattered. After the performance, she spent time reflecting on the experience. Alone in the dressing room, she touched the keys of a small practice piano nearby, replaying the notes in her mind. She thought about how far she had come from the quiet girl in the back row to someone who could command attention without raising her voice, someone whose music spoke louder than words. She understood that fear, once a constant companion, could be transformed into energy, into passion, into a driving force for expression. The days following the regional performance brought new challenges. People now expected great things from her, and with expectations came pressure. She received invitations to perform at other events, offers from local music teachers for mentorship, and even casual recognition from strangers who had heard about her performance. Each opportunity was thrilling, yet it also reminded her that she had to remain grounded. The applause and attention were not the goal. The music itself and the honesty she poured into it remained her true purpose. At school, dynamics shifted. Some students treated her with newfound respect, while others struggled to hide their jealousy. Rumors and comparisons arose, and she faced subtle tests of patience and humility. But she had learned to focus inward, to let her music guide her, and to remember that the external world's judgments could not dictate her worth. Her quiet observation of human behavior, honed over years of solitary reflection, became a valuable tool. She navigated conversations and encounters with grace, understanding that every action, word, and glance could be interpreted in multiple ways. and that her response should always align with her own integrity and purpose. At home, she continued to develop her craft with dedication. Every evening she approached the piano with a renewed sense of purpose, exploring new compositions, experimenting with harmonies, and allowing herself moments of improvisation. These sessions were sacred, free from expectations or pressure, and they reminded her why she had fallen in love with music in the first place. Each note was a discovery, each melody a bridge between her inner world and the external reality she was learning to navigate with confidence. Over time, she began to notice subtle changes in herself beyond music. Her confidence grew, not in a loud or overt way, but in a steady, quiet assurance. She spoke up in class more often, contributed to discussions, and engaged with peers without the previous hesitation. Yet she never lost the humility that had allowed her to connect so deeply with her music. She understood that strength and humility could coexist, that being noticed did not require changing who she was, but simply embracing her truth fully. Her story started to inspire others quietly. Some students approached her for advice, others simply observed her dedication and found motivation in it. Teachers commented on her discipline and maturity, often noting how her growth extended beyond music into all areas of her life. She realized that by being true to herself, by sharing her soul through music, she had become a model of courage, patience, and authenticity. People didn't need to follow her notes precisely. They simply needed to see that passion and perseverance could create something remarkable. The regional performance marked a turning point. It was not just an event, but a realization that talent paired with courage could transform perception. She had played from her soul, and in doing so, she had challenged assumptions, broken through barriers of doubt, and created a lasting impression on those who witnessed it. That understanding became a guiding principle for her future endeavors, reinforcing the idea that personal expression, when embraced fully, could resonate far beyond the immediate moment. As the weeks passed, she continued to balance school, practice, and the growing attention around her. She remained grounded in her love for music, never letting fame or recognition define her, focusing instead on the joy and authenticity of her performance. Every note she played carried with it the lessons she had learned, the power of quiet strength, the importance of patience, and the beauty of sharing one's truth. Through it all, she remained the girl who once sat silently in the back row, now transformed not by attention or applause, but by the courage to play from her soul, a lesson that would carry her far beyond the stage. After the regional performance, life began to take on a new rhythm. She returned to school with a quiet pride, the kind that made her walk a little taller, her shoulders a little steadier. People's glances were different now. There was curiosity, respect, and even admiration in their eyes. Some came up to her to speak, shyly asking about her music, while others watched from a distance, unable to hide their fascination. She remained calm, speaking only when necessary, always careful to keep her humility intact. Her identity had shifted subtly. She was no longer just the quiet girl in the back row. She had become someone whose presence mattered, someone whose talent had left a lasting impression. Her parents noticed the change immediately. They were careful not to pressure her, knowing that the last thing she needed was to feel trapped by expectations. At home, they created a supportive space, allowing her to practice freely while also encouraging her to explore other aspects of her life. The piano remained her sanctuary, a place where she could pour out emotions and thoughts without interruption. She spent hours experimenting with melodies, improvising and refining her compositions, always striving to convey the deepest parts of herself through her music. This dedication was not for recognition, but for the pure love of creation. As word of her talent spread, invitations began to arrive. Local music events, small community gatherings, and school functions wanted her to perform. Each invitation brought a mix of excitement and nervousness. She understood the responsibility she carried, not just to play, but to convey the emotion and authenticity that had become her signature. She prepared diligently, approaching each new opportunity as a chance to grow rather than simply impress. Every performance was a lesson, a step forward in her journey as both a musician and a young woman discovering her potential. School life continued, bringing both support and challenges. Some classmates openly praised her, while others tried to diminish her accomplishments with subtle remarks or comparisons. She learned to navigate these interactions with grace, understanding that not everyone's approval mattered. What mattered most was her dedication to her craft and the joy she derived from it. She discovered a balance between engaging with the world and protecting her own inner sanctuary, realizing that confidence came not from external validation, but from a deep, personal understanding of her abilities. One afternoon, the music teacher approached her with an opportunity she hadn't anticipated, the chance to perform at a citywide cultural event. The teacher spoke with encouragement and genuine admiration, explaining that this was a rare honor and a significant step for a young musician. Her heart raced as she considered the proposal. The thought of performing in front of a much larger audience was both thrilling and terrifying. Yet she felt an undeniable pull, a sense that this was a moment meant to test her courage and expand her horizons. She accepted, determined to rise to the challenge. Over the next few weeks, she devoted herself to preparation. Her days were filled with practice, experimentation, and meticulous attention to every detail of her performance. She learned new techniques, explored different genres, and worked to perfect transitions and phrasing that would make her music resonate more deeply. Her parents provided steady support, offering encouragement, guidance, and understanding without imposing pressure. The piano became not only a tool but a partner, a vessel through which she could channel her emotions and communicate her story. Each session was a journey, a discovery of both her technical skills and the emotional depth she could convey. As the day of the city event approached, her nerves intensified. She practiced visualization techniques, imagining the audience, the stage, and the emotions she wanted to evoke. She rehearsed tirelessly, but she also learned to trust herself, understanding that spontaneity and intuition were as vital as precision. The anticipation was a mixture of fear, excitement, and determination, a blend that heightened her awareness and sharpened her focus. She realized that performing was not simply about playing notes, but about creating an experience that touched hearts and left a lasting impression. The event hall was vast, filled with rows of seats that seemed to stretch endlessly. Bright lights illuminated the stage, and the murmurs of the audience filled the air with energy. She walked onto the stage with quiet determination, her sheet music clutched gently in her hands. The applause that greeted her felt warm yet intimidating, a reminder that countless eyes and ears were focused on her. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a moment, and let the music flow from her fingertips. The first note echoed through the hall, clear and deliberate, a gentle invitation into the story she would tell. As she played, she allowed herself to be fully immersed in the music. Every chord, every pause, every nuanced movement of her fingers became an expression of her inner world. The audience was captivated, drawn into the emotion she conveyed, responding in subtle ways. A tear in an eye, a smile, a quiet intake of breath. She felt a profound connection, not only with the listeners but with the music itself, a bond that transcended words. She understood in that moment that her gift was not just technical skill, but the ability to make people feel, to evoke emotions that lingered long after the last note had faded. When the final note resonated and hung in the air, silence filled the hall for a heartbeat before the applause erupted. It was thunderous, genuine, and heartfelt, a testament to the power of music and the depth of her expression. She felt a wave of relief and elation wash over her, mixed with a quiet humility. The standing ovation was not what mattered most. What mattered was the realization that her music had touched people in a way that was authentic and profound. She had played from her soul, and it had been received with open hearts. After the performance, people approached her with admiration, congratulations, and curiosity. Teachers, musicians, and even strangers wanted to know more about her journey, her approach, and her inspirations. She answered with calm honesty, never boasting, always emphasizing her love for music and the importance of practice and dedication. The experience reinforced her understanding that success was not about recognition alone, but about the connection she could create through her art. Her humility and sincerity left a lasting impression on everyone she met. In the days that followed, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the quiet girl who sat unnoticed in the back row, to the young musician whose music moved crowds, she had discovered not only her talent but her courage and resilience. She realized that fear had been a companion, not an obstacle, and that every moment of doubt had taught her valuable lessons about determination and self-belief. Her journey was ongoing, with new challenges and opportunities ahead, but she felt equipped to face them with grace and confidence. Her parents continued to provide steady support, celebrating her successes without creating pressure or expectation. They encouraged her to explore new compositions, to experiment with different styles, and to embrace the emotional depth she brought to her performances. She spent hours at the piano, often losing track of time as she explored melodies, harmonies, and improvisations. Each session was a journey into her inner world, a chance to refine her skills and express her deepest feelings. Music had become not just a passion, but a way of understanding herself and the world around her. At school, dynamics shifted further. Students who had once ignored or dismissed her now showed genuine interest and admiration. Some sought guidance, others simply observed her dedication as a source of inspiration. Teachers praised her growth not only as a musician but as a student and a role model for quiet determination and authenticity. She learned to navigate this new attention with grace, understanding that influence came from the integrity of her actions and the authenticity of her expression. She also began to see the broader impact of her music. Small gestures of encouragement, subtle nods of recognition, and the quiet admiration of peers all indicated that her performances had inspired others. She realized that her courage to share herself could ripple outward, affecting people in ways she had never imagined. This understanding deepened her commitment to her craft and reinforced the importance of remaining true to herself, regardless of external pressures or expectations. Through these experiences, she developed a deeper understanding of the relationship between talent, courage, and authenticity. She recognized that skill alone was not enough. The willingness to share one's true self, to be vulnerable, and to persist through fear and doubt was what created meaningful impact. Every performance became a testament to this principle, a way to communicate without words and to connect with audiences on a profound emotional level. Her music was no longer just a personal refuge. It had become a bridge connecting hearts and minds in a shared experience of beauty and truth. In quiet moments at home, she reflected on the journey so far. She remembered the shy girl who had once feared ridicule and compared herself to others, and she marveled at the growth she had experienced. Music had been her guide, her teacher, and her companion, helping her navigate challenges, express emotions, and discover her inner strength. She knew that the path ahead would bring new challenges, but she felt ready, confident in her ability to face them with authenticity, courage, and dedication. As she continued to perform and practice, she remained grounded in her love for music and the joy it brought. She understood that fame and recognition were fleeting, but the connection created through genuine expression was enduring. Her journey was no longer solely about personal growth. It was about touching lives, inspiring others, and sharing the depth of her soul through the universal language of music. She had discovered the power of quiet strength, the beauty of vulnerability, and the lasting impact of courage, lessons that would continue to guide her in every note she played and every path she pursued. As time passed, she continued to grow not just as a musician but as a person. Each performance, each practice session, and each interaction taught her more about herself and the world around her. She had learned to embrace both fear and excitement, understanding that they were part of the journey. The girl who had once sat quietly in the back row, unsure of herself, had transformed into someone whose presence was quietly commanding, someone who could touch hearts without raising her voice, simply through the music she played. The local community began to take notice in ways that surprised her. Invitations came from cultural events, small concerts, and community gatherings. She was asked to collaborate with other young musicians, and teachers encouraged her to consider opportunities for further development and learning. Each new experience was approached with thoughtfulness and humility. She understood that while talent was important, the authenticity and honesty she brought to her music were what made it truly remarkable. Back at school, the dynamics among her peers continued to evolve. Some who had once doubted or ignored her now sought guidance or friendship. Others watched her with quiet admiration, inspired by her dedication and resilience. She did not seek to impress anyone, but she noticed the subtle ways in which her courage and persistence influenced others. Students who had been hesitant to express themselves in music or art began to find their own voices, encouraged by the example she set. She realized that her journey was larger than herself. It was a ripple effect, quietly spreading encouragement and inspiration to those around her. Her parents remained her steadfast support system. They never pressured her, never imposed expectations beyond what she wanted for herself. Their love and guidance provided a foundation upon which she could explore her abilities and passions. At home, the piano continued to be a sanctuary, a place where she could experiment, improvise, and reflect. Each session was a dialogue with her own emotions, a way to process experiences and express feelings too complex for words. Through this practice, she not only refined her technical skills, but deepened her emotional intelligence and self-awareness. One day, she received an unexpected letter from a prestigious music academy, inviting her to participate in a special youth program. The program offered mentorship from accomplished musicians, opportunities to perform in prominent venues, and exposure to diverse musical styles and traditions. The letter was both thrilling and intimidating. She spent hours considering the opportunity, weighing the excitement against her natural inclination for quiet contemplation. In the end, she accepted, feeling that this was a chance to challenge herself further and to continue the journey of growth she had begun years ago. Preparing for the academy brought new challenges and discoveries. She worked with mentors who pushed her boundaries, encouraging her to explore complex compositions and techniques she had never attempted. The sessions were rigorous, requiring discipline, focus, and resilience. Yet, she embraced these challenges with a quiet determination, understanding that growth often required stepping outside one's comfort zone. Through every exercise, every performance, she learned more about the depth of her abilities and the power of perseverance. The academy also introduced her to a community of young musicians who shared her passion. She found friendships and camaraderie with peers who understood the struggles and joys of pursuing music seriously. They exchanged ideas, practiced together, and supported one another through the inevitable moments of doubt and frustration. These interactions helped her recognize that talent was nurtured not only through solitary practice, but also through collaboration, communication, and mutual encouragement. She thrived in this environment, gaining confidence and refining her skills in ways that were both challenging and rewarding. During this time, she continued to perform at events, sharing her music with audiences who had not yet experienced her growing depth and versatility. Each performance was an opportunity to connect with people, to communicate emotions, and to inspire. She noticed the subtle ways in which her music affected listeners, a tear here, a smile there, a quiet moment of reflection. These responses reinforced her understanding that music had the power to transcend words, cultures, and backgrounds, creating a shared human experience that was profoundly moving. Despite the growing recognition and opportunities, she remained humble. She understood that her journey was ongoing, that there would always be new skills to learn, new emotions to express, and new challenges to face. She balanced ambition with mindfulness, understanding that growth was as much about personal development as it was about external achievement. Her practice sessions remained sacred, not just for technical improvement, but as a way to connect with her inner self, to reflect, and to recharge emotionally. One memorable performance took place in a large auditorium filled with an audience from diverse backgrounds. She approached the piano with her usual quiet focus, feeling a mixture of nerves and excitement. As she played, the music seemed to take on a life of its own, flowing effortlessly from her hands, carrying the emotions she had experienced over years of practice and reflection. The audience was captivated, reacting with awe and emotion to every note. She felt a profound connection with them, an unspoken understanding that her music was a bridge between hearts. After the performance, the applause was overwhelming, yet she remained grounded, focusing on the satisfaction of having shared her music authentically. She realized that the true reward was not the recognition or accolades, but the impact her music had on others. People approached her, expressing gratitude for the emotions her performance had evoked, sharing personal stories of how the music had touched them. These moments reinforced her belief that authenticity and dedication were more important than external approval. As she reflected on her journey, she recognized the transformation that had taken place within herself. From the shy girl who had hidden in the back row, she had become someone who could face fear, embrace challenges, and share her innermost self through her art. She had learned the value of perseverance, the importance of courage, and the power of vulnerability. Her music was no longer just a private refuge. It was a means of communication, a source of inspiration, and a testament to the potential that lies within every individual willing to pursue their passion. In her quiet moments at home, she continued to explore new compositions, experiment with improvisation, and reflect on her experiences. Each session at the piano was a journey, a way to process emotions and continue growing both musically and personally. She understood that learning was ongoing, that every performance, practice session, and interaction offered opportunities for growth and discovery. She embraced this mindset with gratitude and humility, recognizing that the journey itself was as important as any destination or achievement. She also began to mentor younger students, sharing her experiences, offering guidance, and encouraging them to pursue their passions with dedication and authenticity. She found joy in helping others discover their own voices, recognizing that the lessons she had learned could inspire and empower others. This mentorship became an extension of her own journey, reinforcing the values of patience, humility, and courage she had cultivated over the years. Her story became known beyond her immediate community, inspiring others to embrace their own talents and pursue their passions despite fear or doubt. People admired not only her skill but her approach to life, quiet, determined, authentic, and deeply human. She understood that her journey was not about fame or recognition, but about touching lives, sharing her truth, and creating a ripple effect of inspiration that extended far beyond herself. Through it all, she remained grounded in her love for music, the joy it brought her, and the way it allowed her to connect with others. She recognized that the essence of her journey was not the applause, accolades, or recognition, but the courage to play from her soul, the willingness to share her innermost self, and the dedication to her craft. Each performance, each practice session, each interaction became a reaffirmation of this truth. As she looked toward the future, she felt a sense of calm confidence. She knew that challenges and uncertainties would continue to arise, but she had learned to face them with courage, humility, and grace. Her music would continue to be her guide, her expression, and her connection to the world. She understood that the journey of growth, discovery, and self-expression was ongoing, and she embraced it fully with gratitude, determination, and a deep love for the art that had shaped her life. In the end, she remained the same person at her core, quiet, introspective, and deeply committed to her passion, but she had grown into someone capable of moving hearts, inspiring others, and living authentically through her music. She had discovered the power of courage, the importance of perseverance, and the beauty of expressing oneself fully. Her story, once a quiet journey hidden from view, had become a testament to the extraordinary potential within every individual willing to listen to their heart, embrace their talent, and play from their soul.